Hey guys, this is Justin at the Survivor Review, and continuing my look at all the James Bond movies that involve the evil organization Spectre. Today I'm going to be talking about Thunderball and You Only Live Twice. So let's get started with what was at the time the biggest Bond movie ever, Thunderball.
So he strikes like thunderbolt.
So after the huge success of Goldfinger, they had to make the next Bond movie as big as they could, and it really shows. This is the first grand, epic James Bond movie, which is one of the best parts about it. So the plot involves the number 2 at Spectre, Emilio Largo, who steals 2 nuclear bombs and hides them where nobody can find them, and basically holds the world ransom. So this leads Bond to the Bahamas, where he investigates the missing bombs and has to find them before Largo uses them against the world. So like I said earlier, this is the first big James Bond movie, and that's both the pro and the con of the movie. The pros of it is that it's a lot of fun to watch this big, grand, giant scale adventure, and I always love it when you see old movies like that. They just have this big scale to them, which makes them a lot more fun. The cons are, it feels bloated at times. This movie has too much going on, and sometimes it feels dull. This movie is not perfect by any means. It's an enjoyable James Bond thriller, but it is heavily flawed, and it's kind of a mixed bag. The cast is solid. Sean Connery is as great as ever as James Bond, just having a blast with the role, just being his normal, awesome Sean Connery self. The main Bond girl, Domino, is really sexy Bond girl, but her character didn't really interest me that much. I don't know, I found her kind of eh. The villains are what really makes this movie work. Largo is a very fun villain. Yeah, he's one-dimensional and doesn't have a whole lot going for him, but he has very good screen presence, and there's a lot of great back and forth between him and James Bond throughout the movie.
Perhaps you'd call one for me.
Of course. Paul!
Seems terribly difficult. No, it isn't, is it?
And he's just a really fun, menacing, ruthless villain that is really just enjoyable. But who steals the show is Fiona Volpe, this assassin character who's just a badass. She's this just psychotic and crazy assassin, and I love how she never falls for Bond's charms.
James Bond, who only has to make love to a woman and she starts to hear heavenly choir singing. She repents and immediately returns to the side of right and virtue. But not this one.
She's still a bad guy through and through, and she's great. She's one of the best Bond girl villains. The action scenes are all enjoyable and a lot of fun. There's a lot of underwater stuff in this movie, and it's all very well shot and very well done. The only problem is the big climactic battle of the movie is this giant underwater sequence that starts out really cool, because it's like you've never seen this before. Just guys going at it underwater and shooting each other and fighting. But it does kind of drag a little as it progresses. So it starts out cool, but it kind of just gets as it goes on. But from a technical standpoint, it's amazing. It's very well shot, all well choreographed, it's all really good. It's really evident the bigger scale of this movie compared to the first 3 films. Instead of Bond just meeting M in his office and discussing with him, he goes to this big meeting room and has all the 00 agents there, and it's just like huge set and this giant map. And then in the first scene after the credits, you see the Spectre meeting, and it's in this awesome looking set that is so well done. And you have all these Spectre agents discussing what they just did and what they just accomplished, and you see Blofeld, again you don't see his face, just up on the top, just moderating this whole thing. Then there's this one Spectre agent who hasn't performed very well lately, so he kills him, and just, it's all classic Bond stuff. This is the stuff that gets spoofed later on in Austin Powers, and it's just an awesome scene. And that's the major connection to Spectre in this film, is that Largo is working for Spectre. He's the number 2 at Spectre. The problems with this movie mostly stem from the fact that the pacing kind of drags at some points, and this movie feels a little bloated compared to the other Bond films, which are all like a lean 115 minutes, 110 minutes. This one's over 2 hours, and you can tell they were just really trying to make this a big grand movie because Goldfinger was such a huge hit. And on a technical level, it works. It's a beautiful looking film. All the effects are really good, especially for the time. The pre-credit scene with the jetpack is just kind of silly nowadays and just isn't very effective. I mean, I don't mind some cheesy Bond gadgets. It just doesn't work well on screen. So overall, it's a fun movie. It's just heavily flawed. So out of 10, I'm going to give it a solid 7 out of 10. So that's Thunderball. A mixed bag, but mostly solid film. There's still some great James Bond moments, and still this old school classic Bond style, which is so much fun. Connery gives another great performance as Bond, just showing that he really is the best James Bond. It's just gets bogged down by some bad pacing, the plot being iffy. It's still an okay movie. You could tell this movie was made at the peak of James Bond popularity, when he was like the biggest thing in the world. And what happens when you're so high up, you can only fall down. And that's what happens with You Only Live Twice.
You only live twice.
This is going to be a kind of hard movie to review, because technically it's a bad movie, but it's so entertaining. This movie gets so ridiculous at times that it's just so much fun. So a mysterious spaceship devours an American space capsule. The Americans believe the Russians are behind it. However, the British believe there are other powers at work. They track the space shuttle and find that it may have gone down over the Sea of Japan. So Bond is sent to Japan to investigate and find out what happened before World War III breaks out. Where do I begin on this movie? It's just so ridiculous and over the top. I mean, the opening scene is a giant spaceship devouring a space shuttle. If that doesn't show you what this movie's gonna be like, I don't know what will. It's just crazy, but it's so much fun. Whereas Thunderball is technically the better movie, it's better made, the plot's better. I think I had more fun watching this one, to be honest. This one has no dull moments, whereas Thunderball has a bunch of dull moments throughout. This one's just a blast all the way through. It's just this crazy energy to it that's just so much fun to watch. Though there are problems. The problems with the movie are the plot is very messy. It's all over the place at times and just ridiculous. And the biggest issue with the movie and the saddest issue with the movie is Sean Connery. Whereas I just said there's a lot of energy to the movie, yes there is, aside from Sean Connery's performance. He looks really bored throughout this movie. You can tell just at the point where he's just like, yeah, I'm getting done with this whole James Bond thing, because he just seems out of it, just kind of like, yeah, just going through the motions. And that's really sad to see, because he is so great as Bond, and his performance in the first 4 films is just phenomenal. So to see him just sleepwalk through this movie is pretty disappointing. He's still not awful in the movie, he just it lacks the energy that he had in the previous films, and that really sucks. Though, what works about this movie, there's a lot of just fun elements to this. The best part about this movie is the sets. Blofeld's lair is inside this volcano, and it's this amazing, huge set that is probably the best set I've seen for a James Bond movie. And it's so crazy how they built this giant thing. Whenever you see that set, it's like, wow. It's incredible. It really is. And the ending action scene where all the forces are fighting against each other is just nuts and so much fun to watch. Also, at times, the movie feels like a travelogue of Japan. Basically, the entire movie takes place in Japan. And yeah, there's so many scenes where they're talking about Japanese culture and showing that off. And it really feels like an advertisement for Japan. There's a scene where Bond has to go undercover and have a wife. And there's literally this whole scene dedicated to a Japanese wedding. And it's kind of like, do we really need that? It really feels like they're just advertising Japan. And that gets a little annoying at times. Though, what makes this movie really important when it comes to Spectre is this is the movie where we finally see Blofeld.
Allow me to introduce myself. I am Ernst Stavro Blofeld.
He was played by Dr. Loomis himself, Donald Pleasance, and this is the most classic villain performance ever, and he is really fun in the role. The problem is you don't get enough of him. You don't see Blofeld till the middle half of the movie, and it's just the typical, you don't see his face and he's just petting the cat. And then you don't actually see his face until an hour and a half into the movie. And then he doesn't get a whole lot to do. He just he introduces himself, and that's a great scene. Then he just does a few little other things and just runs away, and that's it. And that's really underwhelming. But Donald Pleasance's performance is just great.
They told me you were assassinated in Hong Kong.
Yes, this is my second life.
You only live twice, Mr. Bond.
This is where Dr. Evil came from in Austin Powers. He is based so much off of this, and it's just so much fun. Oh my god, it gets so ridiculous. There's a part in the movie where I mentioned earlier where James Bond goes undercover and gets married, where he also has to make himself look Japanese. So they give him this Japanese makeup, and it's the most unconvincing looking makeup ever. It's so ridiculous. But at that point in the movie, you're just so into it that you're just like, yeah, sure. I mean, what other movie can you see where Sean Connery is made to look Japanese and he's learning karate? I mean, come on. It's so ridiculous. And yeah, there's ninjas in this movie. The final battle between Spectre's henchmen is against ninjas. 'Cause why not? I didn't expect this movie to be as fun as it was. I haven't seen any of the James Bond movies in forever. So I'm kind of going into these movies with new perspectives because I haven't seen them since I was younger, and I really didn't know what to expect going into this one. I knew this was the one where Connery starts to get tired and stuff like that, but I didn't expect it to be just so much fun. This is like Rocky IV, where, yeah, it's technically not very good, but there's so much entertainment value, so much effort put into it, aside from Sean Connery, that you just get past the fact that it's a stupid plot, it's really ridiculous, and you just have a blast watching it. This is the kind of Bond movie where you just sit back and go, yep, let's throw on a Bond movie. You only live twice. And just sit back and just enjoy the ridiculousness. Overall, this movie's fun. It's not a classic. It's not one of Connery's best. It's not the kind of Bond movie you'd want to introduce somebody to the series to. Be like, this is James Bond, because they're going to be like, what is this crap? But it's a fun, crazy 60s giant budget action adventure that is just entertaining. So out of 10, if it wasn't for this movie being so entertaining, it'd be like a 6. But you know what? Screw it. Since I had a blast with this movie, I'm gonna go 7 out of 10. So that's You Only Live Twice, and I know I'm probably like the only person giving this a positive review because I know a lot of people don't like this movie, and to be honest, I understand why. I totally see why you wouldn't like this movie. The biggest problem with the movie is just Connery's uninspired performance that just really drags it down. Just the plot issues are just a mess. But aside from that, this is just a ridiculously fun movie. So I'll be back next time with On Her Majesty's Secret Service and Diamonds Are Forever. So until then, I'll talk to you guys later.